Yes. All right. Welcome all to the 12.4 front-end kickoff. I should all have access to the agenda. We'll just do what we've done in the past, kind of go through some of the larger bugs, technical debt, and features. Let me share my screen. All right, everyone see? Cool. Okay, so no security issues for 12.4. It's exciting. We've got a couple in 12.3 that we are working on, but they should be finished fairly soon. So move on to the bugs. There also isn't any major bugs. The highest prioritized bugs are P3s and S3s. There is one that's getting a little bit larger, this one. I know a couple of you have noticed this. I know Fatih just commented on it. It seems to be hitting more people more often. So I think I'm gonna move it into 12.4 and see if we can take a look at it. I don't know, because nothing's changed. I think it's an issue with the newest version of WebKit. So we first saw this on the Edge dev stream, and then it made it into Chrome. And now that it's in Chrome, it's happening a lot more. So I'm gonna move this into 12.3 and see if there's anything that we can do to not fix the WebKit bug, but see if we can kind of figure out a workaround for it. Okay, so now we have our technical debt stuff. We have a decent amount of tech debt that we're working on, or backstage stuff that we're working on, primarily because we deliberately took on less features in 12.4 so that we can kind of reset our planning. We've gone the past few releases with a lot of issues just rolling over from the previous release. We kind of ideally would like to use 12.4 to catch up, essentially. So 12.5, ideally, we can be a little bit better at not so much better at being predictable, but just getting a better handle on expectations we can set with our customers. So that being said, let's move on to the technical debt / backstage stuff. The first one we have here is one that Kushal is already working on. It's use GraphQL for roadmap. We're already, well, Kushal, you want to talk through this one?
Yeah, so it basically converts roadmap app to use GraphQL, because in other places, like if you load up Epic today, and once we enable the Epic trees feature flag, the tree tab that you would see loads the data via GraphQL. So we want to unify all the places where Epic data is fetched, and we want to move all the fetch requests to GraphQL. So it is around the roadmap. And once we have both roadmap tab and Epic tree using GraphQL, which is the second issue in the technical debt, what we'll do is that we will combine both the network requests. So when the page loads and when you are viewing any existing Epic, both the tabs data, be it Epic tree or the roadmap, will be loaded via GraphQL and will be doing only single query. So it is basically foundational work for the roadmap part. So once that is done, we can work on this Unify API calls issue.
Yeah, so here's the second issue that Kushal was talking about that we'll work on once that first one is done. Cool. Second one, sidebar. So kind of the theme for 12.4, I think, at least from a backstage technical debt perspective, is that sidebar. We have that issue, or that epic, with a few things that we want to refactor. This is kind of the first step, ideally, because we want to eventually start experimenting with real time on the sidebar. And there's also a whole bunch of sidebar improvements that are upcoming, which we'll see a little bit later in one that Scott is doing also. But as far as this one, Kushal, you want to talk through this a little bit also?
Yeah, so currently, when you look at the right sidebar, where we see basically assignee information, labels, epics, milestone, etc. So this sidebar currently has 3 implementations across GitLab. One that we have now is the HAML one, which you are seeing right now. Like if you visit any issues or merge requests, the right sidebar is implemented. So the wrapper itself is implemented via HAML. But there are parts of it which are implemented in Vue, like the epics drop down, the labels drop down, milestone drop down. Those are all scattered in JS and Vue. So it is like a fusion of HAML, JS, and Vue across the places. And if you visit the Epic page itself, there the entire sidebar is implemented in Vue. And if you open issue boards there, if you click on any card and the right sidebar is revealed, so that sidebar implementation is also done in Vue. So we are kind of unifying all the different approaches and making a single sidebar implementation that is available across GitLab. So that will help us getting rid of a lot of technical debt, because currently if you want to modify sidebar, then there are multiple places where you would have to touch and do the changes. And it is not very maintainable, to be honest. So we'll basically unify all the approaches. We'll create a single sidebar wrapper in Vue, and hopefully we'll do the data fetch using GraphQL, and maybe we would use either WebSockets in vanilla, or we would do GraphQL subscription. But that comes later. First part is to create the wrapper first, so that all the sidebar implementations are consistent across GitLab. And we'll start by working on this behind feature flag, and we would implement the common parts which are shared by issues, merge request, and epics, so that we have all the things available via GraphQL. And in the later releases, we would add specific items for a specific context. Because sidebar needs to be context aware, like not all the items that you see in the issues page are available in the merge request page, and vice versa. So we would do those differences later, but first we will start with the common items which are available in all the contexts, and that's how we'll go. So that is for the sidebar.
Cool. And that's Scott. Where's the one? Here. All right. So this one is our first new sidebar in a while. Ideally, we'd use that shared sidebar once it's done. Let me see. Yeah. So here has a few new components that we don't use in other places, like the work in progress limit, and we may be able to share components here, but there is a bit of it's a different sidebar than we've used in other places. So
yeah, I think it would be wise not to combine this sidebar item or the wrapper itself with the actual sidebar that we are working on, because this is very specific to issue boards. And I think it would be easier to maintain this sidebar if we do not plan to add additional items in the sidebar. Like I can see that there is this label list, but are we planning to change label from here? Like if someone decides to change the label for entire list, then would it be possible? I don't see how one would do that, because that would lead to a lot of changes. Like all the issues within the list would be changed with a different label. So if that's not the case, then I think it makes sense to have this sidebar entirely separate from the rest of the implementation that we are planning.
Okay. We should talk through that, Scott, with Kushal on how to plan for that sidebar then.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like there's a few differing opinions on moving forward, so that would be good.
All right. Jeez. Okay, cool. This one I just added. It is the so now that we've started to finish with the first 3 phases of moving stuff over to GitLab UI, which we did for label component last release or the release before. Now we want to start the implementation step where we're actually using those GitLab UI components in the majority of places in GitLab the product. So this is a step in that for labels. We'll start with scope labels just because there are quite a few places where we want to change scope labels. Scope labels. We want to change the UI of like the question mark, and really the only the easiest way to do that is to get every place using the single shared component. So that's what this one's for. It might be higher than await too. I don't know, Rajat, you're probably the expert on scope labels. How many places use scope labels?
A lot, actually.
Yeah.
It's not like just like single place you can, and it's not just like the view component. It's like sometimes Rails also render scope component, the scope labels. So I'm not sure that we would be able to unify it, like just use single component.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out also, because the way we used utility classes, the idea was that we could just add the component styles as a utility class and then be able to use it in HAML. In reality, I don't know if that works yet. So maybe 3 for now, and then if we discover that it's more than that, we can change it. Okay, this one we touched on. Here's more GitLab UI updates. We've actually had form and drop down updates in our backlog for a few releases. We should get to those now because there are also a few places where we want to update the drop down component, and we can't really do that until that has been finished in GitLab UI. So Scott's taking both of these. Nicely done, Scott. He is going to be our new GitLab UI expert at the end of this release.
Is this like a gentle way of making me have more context and then just giving me all of those tickets?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not bad to work on. So, but no, it'll be everyone, but everyone will go to you when they have questions.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
As part of working on GitLab UI is that pipelines runs way faster, so you don't have to wait for your pipeline to pass to get the merge request.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that is true. Except we also don't have roulette, so I normally just send them all over to Kushal, all my reviews. Don't do that though. Okay, features. This one is it's still marked as blocked. Extend issues epics counter tooltip to include number of open and closed items. It's blocked by drag and drop, which is
I think it is blocked by the feature flag itself. Where
Yep.
But at the same time, I think so. There are a couple of things here. Like if we plan to show only, so the original proposal that Annabelle had was that we should be able to show total count of issues and epics available in the entire tree. That means that all the children items are also considered in the counting. That's not the case right now. If you currently expand any of the node and if it reveals more items, then we update the counter. So that's a problem there, because then the number would be dynamic every time user expands a node. Of course, the number doesn't reduce once you collapse the node, just that we update once we have the data in the calculation. And I think last time when we discussed this, like what if we got the count right away on the page load instead of doing it a dynamic update like expanding individual nodes. And Brett said that it would mean that we would be visiting every parent node in the tree, bring up the counter, and then return it back in the first fetch call. And it would essentially mean that we would fetch all the data at once, and then because we would still be referencing all the data even if Rails doesn't return in the API response itself. So if we want to do, if we want to show what are the items which are closed or open, the counter would still be dynamic, at least for now. The numbers would be updated once you expand the nodes. So.
Okay. Yeah, so it sounds like we still need to do a little bit of thinking through that, a little bit of research into that. So it's blocked right now. Because I don't really think it is blocked because it is just by the feature flag. Like we can technically start working on it. I think I'm going to move it back to planning so we can think through some of those issues before we actually get to work on development of it. Okay, real-time updates of issue merge request sidebar. Okay, so this is, I don't think we're going, because there's a lot of dependencies on this one. The sidebar, the sidebar Apollo container is one of them. experimenting with WebSockets, which the managed team, I want to say, is handling that. We're also going to be working with them, and this may be the first, even if it's just a like a component inside of the sidebar, just to experiment with this. But it is another dependency waiting on the managed team to get WebSockets test out there. So this is in there. Like I said, it's going to go through past 12.4 and beyond, and this is really essentially just a spike or an experimentation issue. Okay, the whip limit one, we slightly talked about that. Scott's working on it. He started working 12.3, but we held off on some of the sidebar stuff until 12.4. We'll figure out a plan of attack there for the sidebar.
I have the first MR in review right now, so
Awesome.
we won't be able to do much with it, but
okay. This one is already in review. I think it just got moved back. We're just waiting on some of the backend review, I think, on this. So this one we don't even really have to go through. Next one, create issue from Epic. This is the one Winnie's working on. It's just, and we had a little bit of a conversation around it last week, around where to put this. It'll essentially be in the new tree view. It's just adding the ability to create an issue from within an Epic. View the history of, okay, so this one's a big one. This is just the front end side of this, and I don't know how yet the actual payload is going to look, but this is adding the ability to view a history of changes in changes to the description. So we have a mock here that just shows essentially changes in line like this. But then some of the discussions later talk through making it look more like our MR diffs, which is going to involve, I don't know, both of them will involve a decent amount of work. So I think it should probably be more than a 2. What do you all think? Just looking at this. And again, it's hard to determine until we figure out what we are getting from the back end. But regardless, I think it's going to be a decent amount of work to get this done on the front end.
do we get a payload back? Because I know we poll in the issue for updates in the issue description, but do we get like a Boolean, or is there infrastructure currently set up that's like issue description has changed instead of doing that manually on the front end to check? Do you know that?
Do we poll on descriptions or just on notes or comments?
Descriptions.
We do on description also?
Yeah, remember when I did that task list item?
But the thing is, we only poll for issues, not for merge requests.
Ah, yeah, because this involves all of them.
Oh, sorry. I'm just having my coffee, so maybe I'll be a little sharper in a minute.
No, I mean, that's still about for issues though. I think when we poll, we get all of the description. We don't get a diff. We just get what the new description is. And I don't know how that what that payload looks like.
It's like a markdown in HTML.
Okay. So for now, I'm going to keep it as a 2. But then once we do some investigation into this, and once we work with the backend to see what they're, and I think they've been working on the backend part of this in 12.3. So they may actually have a payload in mind. I'll leave this open to be able, or open to, yeah, be able to be changed at a future date. Okay. Wait in progress information in roadmap epic bars. So this is not in UX. Oh, looks like it was just updated to being UX ready. So this is showing a little progress bar, comparing weights to, or weights of issues completed versus weight of issues inside of that, of total weight inside of that epic, or of issues inside of that epic. Okay, so this is the same issue for both backend and front end. I don't think that is available in the API yet. So this should probably be a little bit higher than a 2 also. And put that as a 3 for now. This makes sense to everyone though. Cool. All right, high labels from issue board cards. We are currently doing, this was UX ready, and then we decided to do a little bit more UX research on it. I need to see where we're at as far as the research, but it's just a kind of convenience toggle here, because like for us, where we have a lot of labels, it can get pretty overwhelming with all the labels. So this just turns off the labels, so you view just the titles essentially. But this is not ready to be worked on yet, because again, I need to see where we're at as far as the research side of things. Okay, these last 2 ones are just updates to a couple places where we currently use an alert to switch that to using the GitLab UI modal. The GitLab UI modal is not complete yet. That was last time I checked, which was the end of 12.3. It was very close. I think within the week, within probably this week, we'll be done or able to use the modal in GitLab UI. So hold on this until next week. And that's those 2, and that is our list of features. Anyone have any questions on anything, comments, anything you'd like to see pulled in, anything you think is unrealistic that we can even look at this release? Any comments? Okay. All right. Well, we can cut out then. But yeah, if you have any questions, reach out. Otherwise, have a great 12/4 and a great week.
Donald, sorry, I had a question.
Yeah.
I was muted and I was talking. So Winnie had added some tickets around refactoring of the board list, I believe, or board. Yeah. There's some. It didn't have to do with GraphQL, but it was like decoupling from our existing like board store and using our board service, or vice versa. Is that something that we need to start pulling in soon? Just given we're touching a lot of that code.
Yeah, yeah. So that's part of the refactor epic.
Okay.
It's actually been in there. We've been hoping to look at it for a few releases now, and it's been kind of, we kept on moving it back and back, especially as we kind of figure out how we're going to handle Vuex and Apollo.
Okay.
But essentially, yes, it's something that we need to look at. I think we're going to take that one on, that refactor, after the sidebar refactor. So more than likely, I'll put it into 12.5.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Well, it's great seeing you all. Have a good, thanks for actually joining on the late night for some and early morning for others, and right at my ideal time. So we should figure out what we want to do for other releases, because now we don't really have like an optimal time that everyone can join. So maybe, and that's where Kushal was talking through that demo video. But if we could figure out maybe an async way of doing this, I don't know. We'll have to figure out for next release. But yeah, thanks for joining, and again, have a good 12.4. Bye all.